Good day, and thank you for watching. If you're renting in California, you may have heard the term rent control, but there is a lot of confusion about what it actually means, and more importantly, how it applies to you, because not every rental is covered, and misunderstanding this can lead to serious problems. Let's start with the basics. California has a statewide rent control law, often referred to as AB 1482. This law places limits on how much rent can be increased each year for certain residential properties. But here's the key: not all properties are covered. That's where many tenants make a mistake. They assume rent control applies to every rental. It doesn't. Certain properties are exempt. For example, many single family homes and newer constructions may not fall under rent control. But even in those cases, there may still be notice requirements and other rules that apply. So the first step is understanding whether your unit is covered. Now let's talk about what rent control actually does. For covered properties, it limits annual rent increases. Typically, the increase is based on a percentage that combines a fixed amount with changes in the cost of living. But there are limits. Landlords cannot increase rent beyond what the law allows. Now, here's where things get more detailed. Rent control is often connected to something called just cause eviction protections. This means that once you have lived in a unit for a certain period of time, your landlord may not be able to terminate your tenancy without a legally recognized reason. These reasons are usually divided into two categories: at-fault reasons, such as non-payment of rent or violation of lease terms, and no-fault reasons, such as the landlord moving into the unit or taking it off the rental market. This distinction matters because it affects your rights and your options. Now let's talk about notices. If your landlord is increasing rent, they must provide proper written notice. The amount of notice depends on how much the rent is being increased. If the notice is not properly given, the increase may not be enforceable. Here's where many tenants make a mistake. They accept the increase without reviewing the notice or understanding whether it complies with the law. But once you start paying the new amount, it can be harder to challenge. Now let's talk about local laws. In addition to statewide rent control, some cities in California have their own rent control ordinances. These local laws may provide additional protections. So your rights may depend not only on state law, but also on where you live. This makes it even more important to understand your specific situation. Now, let's address another common misunderstanding. Some tenants believe that rent control means rent cannot be increased at all. That is not correct. Rent can still be increased, but within legal limits. Now, let's talk about documentation. If you believe a rent increase is improper, you need to keep records: your lease, notices, payment history, any communication with your landlord. Because if there is a dispute, those records will matter. Now let's discuss timing. If you plan to challenge a rent increase or take action, timing is important. Waiting too long can limit your options. So understanding your rights early is critical. Now let's talk about communication. If you have questions about a rent increase, it may be helpful to communicate with your landlord. Ask for clarification, request documentation, but keep that communication clear and in writing, because written communication creates a record. Now let's look at the bigger picture. Rent control laws are designed to create stability, to prevent sudden and excessive increases, and to provide a framework for how rental relationships are managed. But those protections only work if they are understood and applied correctly. Finally, let's talk about strategy. Tenant law is not just about rights, it's about how those rights are exercised. That means understanding your lease, understanding the law, and taking steps that protect your position. Because acting without understanding can create problems, and reacting too late can limit your options. In conclusion, rent control in California provides important protections, but those protections depend on your specific situation. You need to know whether your unit is covered, understand the limits on rent increases, and be aware of the rules that apply to your tenancy. Because what you don't know can affect your housing, your finances, and your legal rights. If you're dealing with a rent increase or have questions about your rights as a tenant, don't guess. Call us at 888 6582. I'm Vince Davis, and we are all in this together.